A new tomb reminiscent of Sweet Home Chicago for the presumed number one pick in the NFL draft. A proposed punishment way too severe for any court or field storming. And signing day. Just how many of those things do you need anyway? This is the College GameDay Podcast for Wednesday, February 28th. Got a leap day, extra day coming in February tomorrow. That's what everybody needs in their lives, an extra day. Rece Davis, Pete Thamel, and Ryan McGee joining us here. Pete, I believe, is joining us from beautiful Indianapolis. So, Pete, how are things going at the NFL Draft Combine?
Well, I landed in Indiana yesterday, Rece, at about noon. It was 68 degrees and sunny. It was like a late September kick, at Notre Dame. I mean, it was beautiful yesterday. And by the time 24 hours later, I walked over to the convention center to start combining today, it was 24 degrees with a wind from the Old Testament that cut right through my spleen.
McGee, are you a combine aficionado? You enjoy the combine?
I enjoy the awkwardness of it. I've only covered like two, I believe, and I enjoy what my favorite part is when you're in your hotel room and all of a sudden, if you're at Disney World, Rece, and I know you're there a lot at the resort hotels, there's a lot of at 6 a.m. you hear kids running up and down the hallway and it wakes you up. The combine is like that, except you open the door and looked, and it's like it's a safety from UConn who's, getting warmed up in the hallway. So that the awkward, and he's on his underwear, the underwear Olympics, the awkwardness of it is my favorite part. And and I love the fact that for some reason, what happens there in your underwear, running around and jumping up and down, completely negates everything you did in 13 football games the previous fall. That's my favorite part of it.
Well, you know why it is? It's because in this league, as I said, in the NFL, they feel like that, it is such a superior brand. It is a superior brand of football, but they feel like it's so superior that they can fix all of the things that those little college coaches had messed up with these guys. If they're really good in their underwear, we can fix that. There's no question with our superior intellect and our ability to reach people and motivate them, and not to mention all of the techniques and schemes that we'll scheme them up. We'll fix all of this. So that's why. I mean, everybody understands the reason why. No one has any of those types of questions, Pete, about Caleb Williams. And earlier in the year, not directly from Caleb himself necessarily, but there was talk that, if it's the Bears, well, they're not going there, that they're going to try to use their leverage to play for whoever he might want to play for and not play for any organization that he didn't want to play for, which is fine, by the way. I want to go on record and say, I know people recoil against that, but if you have a hammer, you have the right to swing it. And when you're Caleb Williams, you have a bit of a hammer. It's going to turn some people off. John Elway turned people off when he didn't want to play for the Colts. Eli Manning turned people off when he didn't want to play for the Chargers. They swung their hammer when they had it. They used their leverage. But now it appears from your conversation with him that while Caleb Williams does in fact have a hammer, it seems to me, let's say that he's decided that it's not best wielded against the city of big shoulders. Meet Packard to the world.
I think the takeaway from the conversation, Rece, was that he wants Chicago to use their hammer. He just basically said they have the last say-so here. He has no agenda. He has no intention of trying to gum up the draft process, like you said, like John Elway did. It's like we get one a generation, right? You get Elway, and then obviously we had Eli Manning. And Caleb Williams, simply put, said that was not going to be him when I spoke with him on Tuesday night. Perhaps more importantly, he said he liked deep dish pizza. And he did say he went down some rabbit holes, I assume on YouTube, on Michael Jordan and Walter Payton. I recoiled a little bit as he said, I'm 22. I didn't get a chance to watch them play. And I was like, whoo, yeah. Whoo. Man, check the grays in the mirror. But it was a good conversation that seemingly is going to set the tone here. I expect the Bears to pick Caleb Williams. I don't have any insight front office information on that, but that just appears the way they are trending and the way this thing's going.
Ryan, do you look at Caleb Williams as a generational prospect, and if so, or even if not, how do you compare what you see from him as opposed to what you might have thought about Justin Fields coming out of Ohio State and going into the draft?
Well, it's interesting because I spent a lot of time with Justin Fields, I haven't spent a ton of time with Caleb Williams, but I'm fascinated by how much the world has changed since Justin Fields was entering the draft 10 minutes ago and Caleb Williams is entering the draft now, because Caleb Williams is the first legitimate NIL legal superstar. And Justin Fields was kind of this experiment because he'd been on a reality television show, on streaming. And then, he's at one school and then he goes to another school. And the book on him was he's difficult to deal with. And you would talk to people that I work with. No, not really. But he was penalized for some things that came off in the reality show when he was in high school. And so he was kind of the first experiment with that. And now Caleb Williams is that plus starring in hamburger commercials, every commercial break, during every game you watch. So I'm fascinated by that part of it. Talent-wise, I feel like they're comparable. I think what Caleb Williams was asked to do when your team's going up 50 points a game wasn't fair. But I'm fascinated to see how well he handles all of this over the next few weeks, because how well I think he handled it all, in the fall. We saw moments where, Colorado, we saw moments where he looked crushed, where he looked overwhelmed. And so how do you take that now as a person, not just as a football player, and translate that into the pressure that's coming out? And I feel like Pete, you tell me, it feels like he's handling all of this much better, because I think he's been pushed through this crucible that he was pushed through last fall.
Yeah, I think Caleb Williams is ready for the moment here. As a talent, I would put him sort of in the trinity of, since I've been doing this with Luck, Lawrence, as prospects, right? People became better than them during that time. But Luck and Lawrence, I think he is that gifted, and I think he has that much potential. I think he's just a little more polished of an intermediate passer than Justin Fields, who I liked a lot coming out of Ohio State. But Justin Fields was a monster college quarterback when he was when he was there. As for like Caleb the person, I do think he's been pushed through the crucible a little bit, and I think sort of some of his silence the last 6-8 weeks has sort of created this vacuum where others have spoken for him, mostly anonymously, and sort of created some potential scenarios that really weren't rooted in reality. So I think going forward, Caleb's ready, and I think to go big picture like Ryan did very, very eloquently by talking about the reality show and Caleb to me is kind of one of the first Gen Z high profile prospects. He's just different, he's wired a little bit different. He came up in the Instagram era and the Snapchat era, and it's just different. These guys, kids evolve, generations evolve. And so it's okay for Caleb Williams to paint his nails and do some things that old guard football guys don't like, And but one thing about Caleb is that he's very confident in himself. And I think if there was any skepticism about him, I think if you ever talk to his teammates, his coaches, support staff at Oklahoma or USC, they would all stand on the table for Caleb Williams as a person, as a worker, and a teammate. And that's what matters more than some of the periphery stuff.
I think as it pertains to the painting the nails, it wasn't so much that the nails were painted. It's not that anybody necessarily is against manicures, though I've never had one. I just typically cut my fingernails with hedge clippers. But I think it was the message that was put on there. I don't know if we'll be seeing, F the Packers, on his fingernails if he goes to the Bears.
Boy, they'd like that in Chicago.
Well, they would. The Packers defense, I don't know if instigating NFL defenders is the way to go. But, there are, and I'm not, a front office expert by any stretch of the imagination, but there are also some financial incentives here for the Bears to reset their quarterback clock, not to get too far in the weeds, but Fields is looking at probably about a $22 million option or something for 2025, going to go up to $30 million, probably, assuming he's still a starter by 26. So you have to be convinced right now he's your guy. Williams resets to more a cost-effective quarterback option at the moment, lessens the gamble or at least kicks the can down the road. Total contract estimate for his rookie deal, it'd be, I think I read $38 million, and maybe just 6 or 7 against the cap for right now, which gives you a little more leeway and also gives you more time, because basically what you're asking the Bears to do is decide on Justin Fields right now. And it may turn out that this is a win-win situation. Now, who knows if there is a trade that will be consummated, but if it is, then I think Justin Fields is starting to come around and develop. And it used to be in the old days, back when Michael Jordan played and we all saw him, that it wasn't uncommon to see NFL quarterbacks take 4 or 5 years to develop. And if they were to trade him, I don't know, let's say to the Falcons, that might be something that really worked out for both. But I figure Caleb's going to go number one overall. Anything else that you took away from your conversation about him? Do you feel like he was trying to dampen some of the outside noise that had come along with Chicago at all? Was there any motivation like that?
I didn't feel like he was trying to get anything across in particular. I did specifically ask him about holding up the draft, and I didn't probably phrase it that way in the question, but I think that's what people wanted to know. Are you going to come in and do that? And he was very explicit about that was not his intention. He doesn't have intention. He doesn't have an agenda. I think there was a genuine curiosity, Rece, about the Bears. He hadn't talked to anybody from the Bears. He never met the Bears. He didn't grow up watching the Bears. Like, he doesn't know a lot about the Bears. He did point out the Bears haven't been very good lately. So he, has a curiosity of, again, these kids who've been recruited like him, they get to go and pick. So I think he's curious about, hey, what's it like on the inside? What's the locker room like? What's the facility like? What's the organizational plan? Is, he used the word healthy. Like, is the organization growing and changing and moving in that direction? So I think our old friend Kevin Warren is probably going to provide some of those answers about the direction of the franchise. He's the president, obviously, of the Chicago Bears now, and pushing that organization in the direction. Ryan Poles, former Boston College star, is the general manager. Matt Eberflus is still the coach. And, Caleb used the phrase first date kind of jokingly, and I think both sides have something to show on this. They obviously want to learn from him, and he's going to learn from them.
That part fascinates me. The script flip on this always fascinates me. I've talked to Bryce Young about that. Yeah, I live here in Charlotte.
Yeah.
Obviously, he stepped into a nightmare scenario. Everyone's decided he doesn't know how to play football anymore. But we've talked about how you don't know. Like, you literally, as opposed to here's everything we have, please come here. And you've seen everything. He said, and now he said, you can't even NFL. Part of the secrecy of the NFL, which is, insane in my opinion, you can't even really look at practice facilities online. Like, unless the team's been on Hard Knocks, you have no idea like what the building looks like on the inside. And so it's such a script flip for these kids. And it's also, quite frankly, a little bit of reality check they need, because, you ain't the guy anymore. No matter how much we're paying you or whatever else, the locker room is going to make you earn your keep. And so, yeah, that part of it has always fascinated me, what they're used to, and now having to start at the bottom, wherever they go.
And most facilities are a big downgrade.
Well, I was just Pete, I was going to say the same thing. That is the biggest surprise for some people on the outside, maybe for some of the players too, is that in terms of the amenities, the extras, that's quite a step down from what you're accustomed to.
Yeah.
Most places at the highest ends of the facilities races in college football.
I'm in an inflatable bubble. We're running drills in an inflatable bubble next to the stadium now. Where's my $100 million indoor? I had that.
Where's the waterfall?
Exactly.
Where's the high powered coach saying that this is not conducive to winning? That we have to have a barber shop in here. What's going on? It was funny. This is true in basketball as well. And there was a guy from the NBA that came in and saw, this has been several years ago now. Kentucky people would tell you that their facility needs, I don't think they've upgraded. At the time, a few years ago, they were trying to, but a few years ago, they were kind of, cutting edge, had the best, had redone it and everything. And a guy from the NBA came through and they said, oh, how does this compare to the NBA? And he said, no, what are you talking about? It's not even close. He said, we don't have anything like this. And he said, why? He goes, we spend the money on the players. So that's one of the things that might, long-term might be coming down the tracks as we look at the future of college sports. Hey, Pete, I know you have to go, but I'm not going to let you go until you play a game with Ryan and me that even Adrian and Sean don't know that we're going to play.
Ooh, Rece going off script.
It's combine related. Okay. Just for fun. Who's going to run the fastest 40 at the combine? I've got 4 categories here, I think, or at least maybe 3 categories. So
I saw this in doing my combine prep. There's a DB somewhere kind of obscure who people thought could.
Texas Tech, Tyler Owens,
yes.
Is that the guy?
Yes, Tyler Owens is definitely going to be in that conversation.
Is that your pick?
Funny. Yes, I'll take Tyler Owens. Bruce Feldman's freaks list pre-combine pointed out something really interesting. who's the Seahawks corner who went to UTSA? Is it Tyreek Wooden?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes,
who was a Pro Bowler, monster
Woolen.
pick, like promote the scout, like who did that, right? Like, but he also ran like a 4.2. He had the fastest 40 at the combine. So again, some of the Under Olympics doesn't translate. That translates. So it's always they're the most imperfect data sets in all sports.
It's the James Jett rule. Remember James Jett at West Virginia? Yeah. My dad always tells a story about when he was officiating the Big East and he was gotten in position and it's like a punt return and he's 20 yards downfield and normally with a head start would be okay. And all of a sudden he said this guy went past him and he'd never seen anyone faster than that. Not Rocket Ismail, not Willie Gault, none of these guys.
Wow.
And he goes to Don Nealon and he goes, who in the hell is that guy? And Nealon was like, that's James Jett. He just won a bronze medal in Barcelona or whatever. And it was like, and suddenly he's on everyone's draft boards, It's funny. Speed kills, boys.
Who's your pick, Ryan?
No, that's the pick that all the Texas Tech people have been telling me. I don't know. We don't know what he's going to do past Indianapolis, but he will be a star on social media for at least one day when the 40
those are great picks. A couple other candidates, Xavier Worthy from Texas, Jalen Wright from Tennessee, but I'm going to go with the wide receiver from Oregon State. I'm going to say Anthony Gould, the little guy.
Yeah.
That surprises everybody. Here's a fun one, Pete. Who's faster in the 40? I think they're both running, I believe. You correct me if I'm wrong about this. Chris Braswell from Alabama, defensive end, linebacker type, or Brock Bowers?
Oof.
They're going to be close. I've seen some positive. Again, I've never read a pre-combine report where someone runs slow, so I want to be very clear about that. Oh man, he's really slogging it in training. But I've heard Brock is right there with because I think Braswell is going to be one of the fastest defensively. So I'm going to take Braswell.
I love it when the linemen roll out, when the D linemen roll out there.
Oh yeah,
and it's. I mean, I think about. I remember Montez Sweat. I remember Amari Barno out of Virginia Tech, whom no one had heard of outside of Blacksburg until that day. I want to say maybe 2 years ago, ran like a 4.3. No, it's my favorite is when those dudes roll out there and just truck it. And all of a sudden I'm a third round pick. Like again, it negates the fact that I missed 47 tackles last fall. But I bust off a 4.4. All of a sudden somebody's going to take a flyer on me.
Why are you hating on the combine, McGee? You just continue.
I love it.
You to bash the combine.
But this is the time of year. No. This is the time of year. And you guys will be at the draft. I won't. But this is the time of year where all of the NFL people will call and go, well, I heard so-and-so is no good. I'm like, all I know is I watched him throw 5 touchdown passes, against Elmo. So it's just, I love the fact that the film no longer matters because we're dumb college football people. We don't know any better.
Okay, I'm going to go Braswell too. Are you going Bowers or Braswell, McGee?
I'll take Bowers because all he's ever done is blow my mind. So I'll take Brock.
There you go. Okay, and then this is the final one. Then we have to let Pete go. I'll give you 3 candidates here just for fun. If you want to go off the board, that's okay. I think these are 3 of the leading candidates to do the most reps of 225 on the bench. Chop Robinson, Peyton Wilson, Chris Jenkins. Who you got, Thamel? You can take someone else. Huh?
Didn't Chris Jenkins have a nickname that was
I think Harbaugh called him the mutant, I believe. I believe that's what he called him.
Something of that. So look, if Jim Harbaugh thinks you're a mutant, I'm not gonna bet against you. Now it's hard to bet against Peyton Wilson because that dude, all that dude did was average 16 tackles a game for 7 straight seasons in my mind.
I like Chop.
You gonna take Chop?
I'll take Chop just because we haven't picked him yet, but also how unbelievable. Like if Chop Robinson busts off like a record number of bench presses, like that's out of that movie Draft Day, right? There's no way if someone named Chop Robinson like dominates it. Like I'm all for that just because, right? And there's Chop Robinson. I just want to hear that call. So yeah, Chop, he's my man.
It's probably going to be somebody that's not on the list of 3 that I went. I'm going to go Jenkins. I think you can bet with people who offer games of chance for all of these categories.
Yeah,
that I came up. I believe you can make wagers. Pete, are you going to?
Can I leave you with this thought on Chop? I'll always remember Chop Robinson for being so violent off the edge in that Michigan game.
Yeah.
That he forced Sharon Moore to run the ball 32 straight times.
Yeah.
They were so scared, and their tackles had so little chance to stop him. Because there were like 2 plays in that game where he like beat the snap to the quarterback, basically. He had it so well timed. He had so much explosion. So that is sort of one of those quirky things about last season. I think 32. I might be making that number up. But it was a lot of runs in a row.
And also, it was all of the runs except for one play. I think all of the plays were runs.
Yeah. And by the way, and no offense to any of our friends out there who wager, but if you're wagering on the bench presses at the combine, I have some pamphlets that I'd like to share with you.
It might be time to seek counsel.
It might be time to go to some meetings. Yeah.
Maybe so. Last thing, Pete, what are the odds that you will partake in some of the delicious cocktail sauce from St. Elmo's?
So this weather change has gotten me a little bit congested, and I don't want to give our listeners too much information. They can probably hear it in my voice, but I would say that is one heck of a nasal decongestant. So yes. I think we're gonna roll with it.
I've got a great. I've told you this before, Pete. I've got a great photograph of Jay Williams. He and I were in that restaurant one night, and he was completely unaware of just how potent the horseradish is in the sauce. And so he, you want to get I like that little rush that you get. I never have, nor do I intend to ever do any type of drug. And that's the closest thing I think I get to some kind of buzz or high is when you get either the wasabi high when you're eating sushi, or that little rush, or the horseradish from this sauce. But you need to be careful. Jay Will was unaware of this and just put like a spoonful, it looked like, on a nice piece of shrimp and ate it, and then it got him, and the veins on his forehead are protruding to an alarming rate. But I got a great photo of it.
You should tweet that. I think he'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I have on a few occasions. Maybe when the combine starts tomorrow, I'll do it again. Say this is what happened if you don't use the cocktail sauce wisely at St. Elmo's.
And you guys know one of the grossest places on planet Earth is the bathroom at a college football press box. And it was at the college football national championship a couple years ago in Indianapolis. At halftime, they had St. Elmo's cocktail sauce out for everyone. I was like, boys, y'all need to not do this. And and they started throwing down, and I had the rope basically to myself in the fourth quarter of the game. So it was it was. And by the way, you guys know I basically paid property tax in Indianapolis because I'm there the whole month of May for the Indy 500. I'm using it back for the NASCAR race in late summer. But Harry and Izzy's next door to St. Elmo's, same deal. Same deal. Yeah. And so I tell a lot of people don't, but it's but you have to go. It's a different experience in August though when it's 150 degrees than it is this time of year.
So Pete Thamel left to chase people around Indianapolis, try to make connections with agents, do all those things that the great reporters do, hanging out in dingy bars until the wee hours, getting the little scoops and the waning moments. I'm not sure that he'll find any information on this particular thing, Ryan. But what are your thoughts about the college football playoff? The move to 5 to 7 is expected and appropriate. 5 and 7 meaning 5 automatic qualifiers, 7 at large bids. But then the hook that was thrown out there, or the little piece of bait that was thrown out there, said, well, maybe we expand to 14 instead of 12 and do it. What was your reaction to that? I was like, I'll tell you what mine was. It was like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, I just
it was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, my NASCAR days, my knock would always be on NASCAR that they couldn't just make an announcement. There would be an announcement, and then the end of the announcement would be, and we're also thinking about this. I'm like, why don't you just let us deal with what you gave us? But here's my thing. And I've said this a million times, and I am in a minority on this, and I know it, which is if we're going to expand it, just go to 16 and get it over with.
Absolutely.
Because I want it to be evenly divisible. I hate buys. I hate them. Like, I just don't, I feel like I say this all the time. I've said it to you privately, publicly a million times, which is I want Saturday to look like Saturday and Sunday to look like Sunday. And so as college football marches toward being NFL 0.2 or whatever, the the one thing I do like is everyone has to play some number of games. If you want to win a national championship, if you're Coastal Carolina, you're going to have to win the same number of games that Alabama does. And so I don't like buys because I just don't like what that means. And so start with 16. I grew up on small college campuses, 1AA, back when we used to call it that, Division II, whatever, and it was a 16-team postseason, and it was perfect. And so my feeling all along has been, give me 8, give me 4, give me 16, give me something evenly divisible. And so to me, 14 does nothing that 12 does.
Yeah.
And so just go to 16 and get it over with.
I think, I really believe it may not be true as the sport changes in NIL, and it affords, in some ways, it affords some schools who ordinarily wouldn't be powerhouses opportunities to get in. And not only just to get in, but maybe to compete, because they can pay their players too. And you've got to make sure you've allocated your assets, however that comes out. So maybe that gives you some opportunity there that I'm overlooking a little. 12 even seems a little big. I'm excited about it. It'll be fun. More football with significance will be fun, but I don't know that we have 12 teams who will go through the regular season who will have earned, the right to compete for a championship in the same way that you would if you had a smaller field, like let's say 8 or even certainly 4 or 2. But I agree with you. I would say go ahead and go to 16 and do the one thing that I don't see them doing, which is eliminate the conference championship games and go ahead and start the playoff then. And if you feel like you need to take a little break after you reduce it from 16 to 8, well, then go ahead. Or you could just keep going. And I think that's probably where we will wind up. It may be well after our careers, because college football, though it seems to be changing rapidly now, historically has moved at a glacial pace. So, I think that's probably the long-term answer if they want to go beyond this, because even now with the conference championship games, you are risking diluting them even further. If you, especially, I keep bringing up the scenario, and it might not happen for 10 years, and it might happen with 2 sets of teams next year. You play the final weekend of the season, you play in the conference championship game, and then lo and behold, maybe you each win one game. It's unlikely you'd be paired against each other again for a third consecutive time, but it wouldn't be terribly unlikely if you split those two that maybe each of you win a game, or one of you gets to buy and the other one wins a game and you play again. That wouldn't be beyond the pale. So now you've played 3 times in a really short period of time, and it sort of diminishes the product. So one way to avoid that, I think, is to go on past the conference championship games, which I do enjoy. It's fun to play for a trophy. It's, and maybe you're going to get lucky and you're going to have your top 2 teams that didn't play during the regular season because of the large numbers of teams in the conference, and maybe it's going to work out perfectly some years, and I'm sure that it will. But, I think if you're talking 14, I agree with you. Go ahead and expand to 16 and move along here. But that'll probably take a little while. Here's something that we've spent a great deal of time talking about on College GameDay Basketball that at least has some football connection to it, and that is the idea of the court storm or the field storm. And there's been a lot of reaction to it, a lot of visceral reaction to it, most notably because of the collision with the fan that Kyle Filipowski of Duke had when Wake Forest, who was favored to win the game, by the way, stormed the court after winning.
Yeah.
What answer does there need to be? And with that, what answer would you suggest?
Well, first of all, I think that all of a sudden it's an issue because we've had incidents involving the star player for arguably the most recognizable basketball program in the world, in Duke, and Caitlin Clark. I didn't hear all this outrage. We certainly heard parts of it, but we didn't hear all this outrage until it came down to those 2 things. And I'm kind of torn on it, honestly. I mean, I'm a big believer in, the athletes belong on the court, and the fans belong in the stands. The players don't belong in the stands no more than the fans belong on the court or on the field. But that, at the same time, one of the greatest memories of my life was when I, with my college roommates, stormed the field at Notre Dame after a football game because Tennessee upset Notre Dame in a big upset. I made your boy Coach Holt sign my ticket stub one time at dinner. He did it.
He enjoyed that.
Begrudgingly. I go, hey, Coach, I got something for you to sign. He goes, it better not be from that Tennessee game. I go, it is. But the point is that I get the emotion of it. But I think the dynamics of it have changed. To your point, now my brother's a Wake Forest grad. He is still thrilled. It's the only game he wants to win every year is the Duke game. That's just how they feel after some one lost in the wilderness for many years. Wake Forest basketball. So yeah, they were favored. The criteria for storming the court has changed, and I think a lot of that has to do with social media. A lot of it is I'm running out onto the court. And there's also an awareness. When I ran onto the field at Notre Dame, I didn't run into anyone because I was actually looking around. I think a lot of times you've got them crashing. And, it's like being in Manhattan. People crash into each other every time, it's time to walk because they're looking at their phones. And so there's some of that, and it's posting stuff. I get all that stuff. So I'm torn. I mean, the emotion that and the passion we all enjoy as college sports fans, these are great moments. But the safety aspect of it, I mean, I bring up my dad all the time. I was scared for him multiple times during his career when fans would rush the field, and there's still 8 seconds on the clock. We still got to run plays, and so it's a danger. I get it. I don't want us to wait until there's some catastrophic injury, to an athlete or even to a fan to suddenly decide. And I don't think there should be forfeits.
I don't either.
You teased it earlier. I knew that's where you're going.
It's over the top.
Yeah,
I mean, I know. Look, I know some other people have talked about it, and I'm probably not closer to any administrator in college sports than I am to Greg Byrne. And people say, "Well, he's the Alabama AD, and you're an Alabama guy." But our friendship dates back to the time when he was fundraising at Mississippi State. For whatever reason, we met at a conference, we hit it off, and we've just remained friends through the time he was there when he was at Arizona. I disagree with him on this. And some of it might have been the emotion of the moment. And Alabama has a little bit of a burr in its saddle about the field storming too, because everybody that's beaten them for the last 15 years, it feels like if they do it on their own home field, they storm the field. And many of the people who've been involved in that have said to me that they legitimately are afraid because, you have that panic of being crushed or whatever it might be, and you can't get out. And you're also beyond the physical fear for you. There's also the fear. What if somebody panics and does something dumb, throws a punch, whatever? All of those things are legitimate. And I understand it. I also think it's a little beyond the pale to start talking about, making this some type of trespassing legal offense or whatever, unless someone does something else. I talked to Kelvin Sampson, the Houston basketball coach, about this yesterday, and Kelvin sort of is much sounded very similar to what Seth Greenberg has said, and it's sort of where I fall in this too. Instead of waiting on somebody to make a rule and tell you how it's going to be or supposed to be, how about if the schools and the arenas and the security staff start being proactive about it and set some type of guideline and stipulation? Now, can you stop 10,000 people if they all are of one mind and decide to storm? No, you cannot. But you can if you impose a rule either. If you say, hey, we're going to arrest all of you, or we're going to forfeit if they decide to do it, they're still coming. And, so that's one thing. And as Kelvin pointed out, he said, after our Baylor game, everything, I think I have the example right, but the crux of it is what really matters. After that game, all we thought about was getting ready for Cincinnati. We knew we had to prepare for Cincinnati last night. Now he'll only prepare for Oklahoma, which is another good story coming up, by the way, on College GameDay Saturday. But we prepared for that. How about if the administrations, the arena staff, security say, hey, you know what? This is a game where our fans might do this. So how are we going to get the visiting team off the court? How are we going to protect their area? What message are we going to send them and say, look, we're not predicting we're going to beat you. We're not trying to give you bulletin board material, but in the event that there is a court storming for good or bad, whether because they're mad that you won or happy that we won, here's what we would like for you to do. And here is how we're going to protect you and get you to the locker room. The other thing about it, as I think about the forfeiture thing, which I don't think will ever gain any steam, but as I think about this, we talk about players belonging on the court. What in the world could give fans more power over the outcome of a game than to change the result of a game because they infringed on the playing area? Yeah. So I don't think that'll ever gain anything, but I think some common sense approach to it and some stipulations, or maybe everybody could just adopt Clemson football and meet at
walk
the
out.
paw. Yeah, they walk out. They come out of a leisurely
Yeah.
place. Everybody's invited, because if you slip, even even if they run out in an excited fashion, which does happen from time to time, they come out quickly and in an excited fashion. If you say that, if you use the word storm or rush, man, do you hear it from Clemson people? No, everybody's invited. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's like everybody meet at the center circle. Everybody meet at the giant Jayhawk. Let's all meet there, afterwards, and avoid the other team, because that's the other part of it. You talked about the social media. The one thing I don't recall seeing as much of in the past as you see now from it is like the incident with Filipowski. There was a guy, they were running toward him. They were clearly yelling at him and pointing their cameras at, things like that. That needs to, I don't know how you legislate somebody being a moron.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really know how you do that.
And something has changed, and I want to preface this by saying I'm no prude. I'll be having a couple of cold beers tonight. But something that's changed also is there's alcohol in the building.
Oh yeah.
And like real alcohol, like sold at the concession stand. And so there's a general aggressiveness that exists, I feel like, a lot of times in a heated, and maybe it's kind of a post-COVID thing too, but there's a definite change in aggression in college crowds now versus just a couple of years ago. And the only thing that's really changed is the fact that they can legally go buy beers as opposed to, sneaking airplane bottles into the Cameron student section, as we've all seen. So a lot has changed. You don't want to change the spirit of the building. You don't want to change the spirit of collegiate athletics. But, in basketball in particular, your job is really to get a dozen people off the floor. That's what it is. And so you have to figure out a way to do that. And I love being proactive, about it. Because what you don't want is, and I'm saying this to fans, I'm saying this to administrators, everyone, we don't want a militaristic state, right? We don't want to be going to a game and feeling like, we're going through TSA security all the time, even during the game. And so everybody just use common sense. But the reality is that, there are wins that feel worthy of that. I think about Clemson, even Clemson with the folks on there, they just politely walk. The first time I saw that as a kid, I was like, what are we doing? Everybody just walks out on the field and shakes hands and hugs out, but like it's after a Little League football game. But the craziest field storming I've ever seen was at Clemson, and it was the famous Deshaun Watson versus Lamar Jackson game on a Saturday night. And
I was there. Yeah.
And do you remember that? I've never, as long as I've been going to football stadiums since I could walk, I've never seen that. And Clemson didn't know how to handle it because they didn't walk out. They all, I was like, I remember consciously in the press box going, you know what? I believe I'm going to not go to the locker room because I don't think I can get there. And so there are wins that feel worthy of it. And right now, these things are happening for wins that don't feel worthy of it. So everybody just use some common sense. And but forfeitures, no. I think we can agree on that.
No, I think so too. And common sense, decorum, and being polite to each other. Great place to wrap this thing up. Ryan, great talking to you. Thanks for coming in and giving Pete a little relief. We had to put Pete on the bench with the voice and with the combine thing. We didn't really put him on the bench. He had somebody to meet or some such thing. I don't know.
He had to scoop. He had to go meet some guy in his underwear and get some scoop.
Did.
That's exactly what.
Get a story. Get something going. All right. Good to talk to you, my friend.
All right,
we encourage you to subscribe to the College GameDay Podcast. Continue to talk football, draft, touch on a little March Madness once that time comes around a little bit later on. Subscribe is the easiest way, or you can download wherever you prefer to get your podcast.